Hi everyone, thank you for coming. My name is Claire Conway. I am a psychology major dance minor, and for my Keystone project I worked with the amazing Elizabeth Munsell on a case study studying Boston Ballet's city outreach program, Citydance. I did a case study and analysis of this dance curriculum and its effects on children with emotional and behavioral disabilities. So I want to start off with a brief overview of my project to give you kind of a bird's eye view. So I started out doing background research of existing dance therapy programs, what dance therapy is, etc. And from that, I could create a hypothesis for this particular program. I started collecting data talking to both the Citydance program and the McKinley School, which is the school for the students that I worked with in particular. I collected observations, I did a curriculum analysis, and I was able to gather results from that data collection. And then I created a recommended curriculum implementation on a smaller scale for a public school. So a little bit of background, dance movement therapy. What is dance therapy? So as a psychology major dance minor, everyone's like, oh, are you going to do dance therapy? Is that what you want to study? And I kind of thought, yeah, sounds cool. I don't really know what that is. So I started out by doing research of what dance therapy is, and I found a lot of various findings. I found programs that worked with children with ADHD, with autism, with Down syndrome, and the effects that dance classes had on these particular students. And a lot of these findings talked about the environment that these students were taking dance classes in. So it's an inclusive environment. The teachers are warm and welcoming. The other students that they're working with are dancing with them. They're holding hands. They're dancing in a circle. And it's a welcoming environment for these students. There are also a lot of findings that talked about the movement, the actual physical movement of dance and its effects on impulse control. It was talking about students with autism and how they were able to better control their impulses after a dance class than another form of therapy. And then also in a dance therapy program, there is a connection that is formed between emotion and the physical body. So these students are able to access their emotions and express themselves through physical movement, and then be able to succeed both in the dance classroom and then in other forms of life, socially with their families and their friends, and then academically as well. And from all of this data collection, I was able to create a hypothesis about dance therapy and its effects on students with emotional behavioral disabilities. And I did further research to figure out how to apply this in a public school setting on a smaller scale. So a brief introduction about the Citydance program. I'm going to be talking about it a lot. So Citydance is Boston Ballet's city outreach program. Boston Ballet collects a total of about 15 dance instructors from their school. And these instructors go into the Boston public school system and teach dance to third grade children. They go into the actual academic classroom and they do an hour-long workshop with the students to kind of introduce them to dance. These students are students who would not otherwise have the opportunity to go to a dance class. They're either for financial reasons or their parents are not interested in taking them there. They have no idea what dance even is. So this hour-long workshop kind of teaches them what dance is and how they can implement themselves into the dance world. This program is broken down into 3 phases. So that's the first one is in the public school, and then from there 5 students from each public school are invited to come to the second phase of the program, which takes place at Boston Ballet itself. The students are bused once a week for 10 weeks, and they will have an hour-long ballet class at the Boston Ballet School with 1 instructor and TAs, and then followed by an enrichment classroom where they'll talk about hip-hop dance, Chinese dance, costumes, what a point shoe is made out of, things like that. And then from there, students are invited to continue on into the 3rd phase of the program, which is similar to the 2nd phase where it's still just Citydance students taking the classes, but they're considered for scholarships to continue on to the Boston Ballet School. So I began my research talking to Yoel Cassell, who is the director of the dance program, and I wanted to talk about the mission for this program. Why does Citydance exist? What is their goals, etc.? And he kind of talked a lot about how Citydance has nothing to do with the actual technique of the class. It has nothing to do with the line of the student's leg or their ability to jump across the floor. It has to do with them finding their identity and a cultural awareness and cultural immersion in the arts and in dance. And that's really kind of their goal for this program. So I started talking to him about it, and I was talking about the schools that he was working with, and one of them is the McKinley South End Academy. And I had known from previous classes that I've taken at BU that the McKinley South End Academy is students exclusively with emotional and behavioral disabilities. But when I was talking to Yoel about this, he was saying, yeah, it's interesting. None of the teachers have any idea that these students have any emotional and behavioral disabilities. These students are able to succeed and perform in a dance class the same way all the other students in the class can. So I was like, well, that's weird. Why? How come in an academic setting they can't even be successful in a public school, but they can go to a dance class and perform just as well as everyone else? So that's kind of what I wanted to study for this program. So a little bit more about the McKinley South End Academy. These students are students who started out in the Boston Public Schools, then they got extra help in the school system, but that still wasn't enough. They were pulled into smaller classrooms in the public schools, but there are still triggers in the school setting that kind of hindered their experience, and they are taken to the McKinley South End Academy. They're bused there, and they're all on individualized education programs in a smaller classroom setting with more teachers. There's also social workers that are in the schools to help out with any challenges that they're having. And then the emotional and behavioral disabilities that I'm referring to are auditory and visual difficulties, emotional delays, ADHD, ADD, epilepsy, and autism. So from all the background research that I had done about dance movement therapy programs and learning about the Citydance program and the McKinley School, I was able to create this hypothesis that states with modifications and additions to their curriculum, Boston Ballet's Citydance program can be considered a therapeutic program for children in 3rd grade, specifically for students who struggle with emotional and behavioral disabilities in the area of attention, physical energy, and engagement. I was able to determine those variables from the research that I had done originally. So before starting my data collection, I had to actually define those variables. I was very literally collecting data sitting in front of the classroom with a notebook, so I wanted to be able to have defined variables in order to take notes and have qualitative variables be accurate and defined. So I started with attention, which I based on their physical appearance. Were the students looking at the instructors? Were they answering the questions? If the instructor said to get out of their seats, did they get out of their seats? Things like that. Were they on task? Were they actually looking at the teacher? Physical energy was based on their posture, on, you know, if they were told to jump, did they jump kind of like this, or did they actually jump? Their engagement was, are they asking questions? Were they participating? Did they contribute to the class? Did they have a level of interest, etc.? So again, I started in the first phase, which was in the classroom. And I was looking at both the teaching style of the instructors and the TAs, and then the students' responses to these teaching styles. So I had my notebook with one side looking at the teaching style and the other side looking at the response of the students, and I was able to line up if the teachers were doing one thing, were the students responding in the same way, in different ways that I had expected. Then I took the same variables and moved them on to the second phase of the program, which was, again, at Boston Ballet. And I had, for the second phase, the curriculum that is predetermined and outlined for the instructors. So I was looking at the instructor's fidelity to the curriculum, where the instructor's doing what is outlined on the curriculum, and then how did the students respond to that curriculum? Were they participating? Were they responding in the way that the teachers had hoped and expected? So like I had said, I had the actual curriculum. So I sat down with the director of the program, and he gave me a packet that was the curriculum that is given to all of the teaching instructors. And this is outlined starting out with the class goals. So they'll say, this week we're going to work on expressing emotions. So teach the kids, if you say dance sad, see if they are able to dance sad in comparison to dance happy, excited, fearful, energetic. And then the ideas planned for the class will also include, today we're going to work on plie, which looks like this. Or we're going to work on like skipping across the floor. And all of those things were outlined very literally. Start with the plie, then we'll move on to the skips, etc. for the rest of the class. It'll take up a full hour. Then the roles of the teaching assistants were also outlined in the curriculum. Kind of who is going to be on duty to take the students to the bathroom if they want to go, or things like that. So then, based off of this curriculum that I had, I was able to compare the data that I was collecting. And I based it, kind of my results, on these three forms of data collection that I had. So the first was talking with Yoel, the Citydance instructor, or the Citydance director, collecting data and looking at the curriculum analysis. And I was able to find kind of 5 main components to a dance class that support my hypothesis that this program is therapeutic. So the first is that when the instructors were spending shorter amounts of time on several combinations, a combination is kind of a series of steps, if they did shorter combinations and they did more of them, the students were more likely to be engaged and pay attention. So the students are more inclined if, first we're going to do this, this, and this, they'll pay attention to that, and then they're switching to a different one, then they're ready to learn the next one. Rather than spending 15 or 20 minutes on the same combination, they get bored, they get distracted, they pull on their clothes, they want to go to the bathroom. The next thing I found is that when they vary the tempo of the combinations, the students are more likely to be engaged again. So the first, by tempo I mean like the speed of the steps, the first one will be a slow kind of adagio, as we say, where you do like a slower movement and everyone is kind of controlled and centered, and then right after we're going to do some jumps. So everyone's hyper and energetic, and their physical energy goes up and their attention goes up because they're ready to do it, but then they lose focus. So we need to take it back down to a slower combination in order to regain their center and focus again. I also found that in a dance class, we do a lot of smaller groups. So 4 or 5 dancers will come across the floor doing a skips, and everyone else will stand in the back and watch until it's their turn. And that's really not effective for these students in particular. When they're standing in the back, they're more likely to get distracted, lose their focus, talk to their friends, and they won't successfully pay attention throughout the entirety of the combination. So I kind of found that it's more effective if they are all standing attentive, ready to dance, and then 4 of them will go, and then the next 4 will go, and they're waiting for their name to be called. They were more inclined to be attentive, to focus, and then to perform well. I also found that in a dance class, we often will do a step, and then the instructor will correct you, and you will work on that correction. So on like a tendu, you'll talk about the line of the leg, and then the teacher will say, like, don't do this, do this. And I found that when these are integrated with the combinations, so they will have the corrections, and then the next combination will also talk about the same correction, then they'll be more inclined to successfully fix those corrections and then also pay attention to what they're working on. I also found that the enrichment classes are really successful, but when they're placed afterward, after the ballet class, the students are more inclined to lose focus, and it's more effective if they are placed beforehand, so that they'll be able to focus on the Chinese dance and pay attention and be engaged with that, rather than doing that for the ballet class and then laughing at the Chinese costumes. So in conclusion, I did successfully conclude that Citydance is therapeutic. I did see increased variables from the start of the program to the end of the program, including attention, physical energy, engagement. And then I also found several of these variables, or several of these curriculum suggestions that can be implemented on a smaller scale in a public school setting and be successful. So I was able to determine that movement therapy can heighten attention, physical energy, and engagement. So I think I have probably about 2 minutes if anyone has any questions. Yes.
So what do you think we can extrapolate from your findings in the dance arena to applying to a traditional academic classroom that you think would work to help these students that struggle from the same issues while they're learning academic material?
Yeah, I didn't look specifically at things we could do in like an academic classroom behind a desk. I was thinking more along the lines of if the students are in a classroom for an hour, then maybe have 15 minutes where they do a dance class with like several short, quick movements. And I don't mean that these students need to learn how to do chassé, pas de bourrée, glissade, saut de chat, which a ballerina would do. I mean, like, lift your arm, or like tilt your head and look sad. And like things like that are just as effective. So I was looking more at how we could implement that in an academic setting rather than changing the actual academic class. 1 more minute.
Were students of different genders in the same class, and was there any difference between students based on gender as far as attendance?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Students were in there. I mean, boys and girls were in the same class. The students that I was looking at were 5 boys. So I didn't do a comparison because I wasn't the McKinley students. The 5 that were chosen were all boys. But I saw the other kids that were also in the class. I didn't really notice that much of a difference. Thank you again for coming.